let's get started here. Welcome to the Woodstock WordPress meetup. My name is April. I'm your co-host with WordPress for this meetup. This is an official WordPress chapter. So when you are participating here, you are participating in the WordPress project. And that's really important because WordPress isn't just a content management system or a piece of software. It is an ecosystem and a community, and its mission is to democratize publishing. Because if you can't control, if you can't control the voice, you can't control the message, right? And so we need freedom of publishing for everybody. And we also, like I said, Director of Sugar 5 Design. I'm also the host and lead educator of Remote Control Living, where we do free business education for the community, especially focused on people who work remotely. This is the link. It's in the chat, backups.linkity.me. I think I got every single link that we talk about here. It's on that page. So you can just bookmark the page and refer back to it. So that way you don't have to keep taking notes for the links, because there's a lot of them. Okay. Back it up. Triple redundancy for the win. All right, somebody sent me something. Nope. You tried the link, it didn't open. All right, hold on. Stop. Let's try that. Hold on a second. And we will stop right now. So that's what I'm getting. Did you put the S in the? Copy it. Yeah. And that's what it should look like. It should be, the YouTube channel for the Remote Control Living group, and then every single thing that we talk about today. Look at how much we're going to talk about. And then we've got links to the meetup group, Facebook group, all that stuff. Okay. Awesome. Okay. And then I'm gonna go off of, okay, you got it. All right, super. All right, I'm gonna go off chat for a minute. Because I am not good at multitasking. Okay. All right, so that's me. Triple redundancy, dedundancy. I don't even know that's word. Okay, so why do we back up? When do we back up? How do we back up? How do we test backups? And how do we back up our workstation? So these are the things we're going to be covering today. So like I said, put in chat any questions you have, and I'll try to, when we're done, I will go back and read some of these. Okay, stop periodically for questions. Okay. Why should we back up? Like Melanie was saying that earlier, that some people just don't have any backups at all. Maybe they assume that their host is backing up their site, or that someone else is in charge of doing that. But shockingly, a lot of times the person that you think is in charge of doing that isn't doing it. Or even some hosts, you have to turn that on. You have to turn the backups on, or you have to enable it in your control panel some way. So sometimes you think you have backups and you don't. So that's really scary. So why do we back up? Because stuff happens, right? So what are some situations that might cause you to need a backup? Okay, so if this is your own site, probably a situation where you might need a backup. Your server has crashed. You have been infected with malware, and it just happened and you're not quite sure how to fix it. Or let's say you pushed the wrong button in your hosting account and you accidentally deleted your site. Or you were playing around with your admin settings, and you went into the place where they told you not to go in your functions.php, and you did something, and now you've got the white screen of death. So I don't know if any of y'all have experienced that, but I have experienced almost every single one of those. I've been playing with WordPress since 2005. And like that's 15 years of mucking around, and I wasn't always doing things the right way. So stuff happens. Okay. When should we be backing up? This may seem excessive to you, but I can tell you after 15 years of doing this, you should be backing up every time you turn around. You should have daily backups. You should have backup. You should be taking a backup before you update, after you update, and that's plugin updates, and that could even be content updates, although that's not as important as like when you're actually, updating plugins. Updating to archive a site. And actually, if y'all remember, if y'all will ask me during Q&A, because I forgot to add in a slide for archiving a site, but I will go through that process if y'all don't let me forget. And to keep it offsite. So, and that's also kind of like archiving, but I think of archiving more as like you've rebuilt your site. What are you going to do with your old site, right? But also, I think it's really important to have a copy of your backups not on your server, and we'll talk about that as well. Here. Okay, so there's multiple ways of backing up, and there's actually also a way up here that I didn't include, which would be just exporting the site from your files and your files in your database. Most people don't do that, but I will discuss that also. Here. So we have three different main ways: a service, a plugin, and your hosting company. Okay. So we're going to stop right here. How are you backing up your site? If you put that in your chat, what are the ways that you're using? Are you using a service, a plugin, your hosting company, or all of the above? Yes, when in doubt, back up. All three? Yes, that's what I do. All three combo, right? And some of these services are a hybrid. They're a service and a plugin together. Right. All right, cool. Let's go back here. All right. Good gravy. Come on. There we go. Backup services. So I have used a couple of these. I haven't used all of them, but the most common services are Managed WP, Blog Vault, iThemeSync, and Main WP. So Managed WP is owned by GoDaddy. They were a standalone product, and then GoDaddy bought them. And a lot of people kind of, let's see, they had some issues earlier in the year, but I have found them to be extremely reliable. Although I would never rely on one service or product for all of my backup needs. And I'm going to tell you why. Last year, there was about a span of a week where Managed WP's backups were failing. And if that had been my only layer of backups and something had happened, I had been really messed up, right? So one of the things I really like about Managed WP is the ease of restoring backup. So it's really easy to take backups. It's really easy to restore backups. It's really easy to clone from a backup to create a new site. That's really easy. Blog Vault, I have also been a paying member of Blog Vault, and I think they're a great company. The issue for me with Blog Vault is it's more expensive than Managed WP, and the ease of restore is not there. So unlike Managed WP, where you can just hit a button to restore, and sometimes if something goes wrong, then you have to go in and do it by FTP. But Blog Vault, as far as I know, as of today, that you still have to only do it through FTP. And honestly, I feel like if I've made a critical error and it's during business hours and my site goes down, I want the fastest possible way. And honestly, I manage about 60 sites in Managed WP, and I've been doing that for a couple of years. And there's only been maybe twice in all that time that I had to actually go to FTP to restore. And most of the other times, and I do a lot of restores because maybe I've updated something and it broke the CSS. And then I had to just restore it, right? Because we maintain a lot of websites. So that's part of doing the QA after you do maintenance is, you know, you got to visually check it. Is it broken? Is it doing okay? Right. But if I had to do that through FTP for every single restore, that would be really difficult for my timeliness, right? I think Sync, it's a hybrid of a dashboard and Backup Buddy. And Main WP, it is a dashboard that syncs with multiple backup solutions like Backup Buddy, Updraft Plus, all-in-one migration. So it does a lot. Hold on, check chat real quick. Yeah. Yeah, Managed WP is one of the few services that work with GoDaddy without timing out. That is true. And also, I had a problem, and I don't know if this is still the case, but I mean, it's been about 5 years since I did this, but Backup Buddy was not working with Managed WP at that time, except when you used it in classic mode. And it was just a lot of hoops to jump through. I think they fixed that by now. But Managed WP, and here's the great thing about that: if you are GoDaddy, if GoDaddy does host your site, all the services at Managed WP are free. Yep, they fixed it. Yeah. So Managed WP, it is the backups. I think it's like $2 a month per site to back up, which isn't horrible or extortionate, but you get all their services for free if you host with them, which I think is very, very fair. Okay. Now. Oh, and did I say main? Yeah, Main WP. I did that. So I'm in the process of trying to make the decision to move to Main WP because I have a lifetime license there. But it's so hard, even though I pay over $100 a month for Managed WP because of all the sites that I have and all the services I use. Main WP, it's self-hosted. So Managed WP is a cloud service. Main WP, you install that on your own server or WordPress install, and you sync that is your dashboard. And so you sync everything from there. And a lot of people I know swear by it. It's just really hard for me to make that jump, even though financially I know I need to, because there's no reason to pay $100 a month if you can do something else. But it's just getting up to speed. So what I might do is I might do a whole training on that, because they say if you need to learn something, you should probably teach it, right? Okay. So backup plugins. There's a bunch of different backup plugins that you can use. These are the ones that either I've used or was recommended in our Facebook group, the Remote Control Living Facebook group that I have. So Updraft, Backup Buddy, all-in-one migration. I've used all of these. And someone else mentioned WP Time Capsule. That was made by the people who, is it Infinity, the dashboard, Infinity WP? So it's kind of like an alternative to Managed WP that's also self-hosted. I don't use that one, but a lot of people do, and I think it's fine. I use Backup. Well, I don't use Backup, but I use Updraft, all-in-one migration. Mostly all-in-one migration. I really, really love that plugin. Who we know? Oh, I didn't know that. Who's that? Melanie said. Updraft is the only one that will work with multi-site network, allow you to restore a single site. That is incredibly good to know, because I don't do hardly anything with multi-site, but that's great information. All right, so I can tell you of my favorite, all-in-one migration, because it's literally exporting and importing, right? And they have a free version. I do a lot of backups with Updraft, but honestly, I've never had to restore an Updraft backup, and I know it's pretty, I have done it, and then you just restore it, but I don't use it as often. So this is just another level that we go to. And backing up at your host. So no matter what your host is, there should be an option to back up your site, right? Usually you have to, some hosts, it just is automatically on. Most hosts that I've interacted with, you had to enable them. Yeah. How to automate all-in-one migration. I have not automated it. But I think Beth Livingston was in, so what I did was I posted in the Remote Control Living Facebook group and asked kind of what everybody was using for backups. And Beth said that she does that to Google Drive. So maybe we'll see if we can find a tutorial or something like that and put that on the Linkity page. Okay. So here's some questions you should be asking. Is it okay to just have your server, your host backing you up? Where are those backups stored? Can you restore them easily, right? Your control panel backups versus plug into server backups. So, and then what happens if your server goes down? Okay, should this be your only level of protection? I host almost, I would say probably 75% of my sites at Convesio. And I trust them implicitly, honestly. I imagine that my backups there I could probably rely on them solely, right? Because they've just impressed me with their level of professionalism, and I just trust the product mostly. And I'm saying that because I have had situations where, and not with Convestia, but with other hosts, where the backups that I took were corrupted. And not only that, I had to go to my second level of backup, and that failed. And I ended up having to go to my third level of backup. I truly believe you should have 3 levels of backups, right? So you should be backing up at your server. You should probably have some type of service that is backing up your sites on a regular basis, and a plugin where you can at least manually export once a week or once a month, so that you have that every level. Where are your backups stored? So at the server level, they're probably going to be stored on the same server where your site is, right? If you have VPN cloud hosting, they may be stored in AWS or somewhere else. But here's the real question: are they going to be taking up your server space, your disk space? So if you are doing your backups, let's just say, and you only have 10 gigs of storage on your account, and your site is 5 gigs, how many backups? And of course, they zip those up, and so they're not taking up the whole thing, but you're going to run out of disk space really quickly, and probably are going to only have be able to keep a couple of backups. One of the things some places you can do is have your backups emailed to you. So I've done that before, where the control panel just allows them to email me a copy of my site once a week. I think that's really great. Control panel backups plus versus plug into server. Okay, so here's another thing that you need to think about is if you're back. So I've had this happen. So let's, once again, using like the 10 gig website space, I installed Updraft, and I had it downloading to the server. I can't tell you how fast that maxed out my disk space, and I started getting warnings. And I had done that for so many websites, and it was just like playing whack-a-mole getting that taken down, because that was just not an ideal, that was just dumb of me to do, honestly. Because I just didn't even think, oh, this is going to max out my server really, really fast, right? So where your control panel backups don't always go towards your disk space, but that's a question you need to ask your hosting company, right? And they may tell you, oh, you don't need that, we're going to back it up for you. Well, okay, but they're not the ones that are going to have to face the music if the backup fails, right? You're the one that's going to have to really pay the price on that. And if you are saving to your server, what happens if your server goes down, right? If all of your backups are being saved to the same server that your website is on, and that server goes down or is corrupted or gets hacked, what happens to all your backups? All your backups are now down, corrupted, or hacked, right? So anybody have any questions about this? Yeah, 3 levels in different locations. Yes, a server crash, lost everything. That is like my worst nightmare. That really, really is. I host in a couple of different places. One of the places I have is a dedicated server. And with that, I even back up the server. So I have I back up the entire server. I back up individual sites, back up to the point where you think you're crazy. Because I promise you, at some point, you're going to be glad you were crazy. Okay. And somebody said, actually, it was Tom Pinelli from Convesio. He asked me to touch on restoring your backups. So a backup is actually just a theoretical backup until you've tested it. Okay. So you can back up every day, in 3 different places. But if you've never tested any of those backups, then what you have are theoretical backups. Because backups get corrupted too, or they, something timed out and all the files didn't make it in. So one of the ways that I back up, let's see if I can put that in here. Yep. So this is how I test my backups. So I have an account at Server Avatar, which is like a server management system. And I have a $6 a month Linode box. And I just connected those two, installed WordPress, and I can take my backups and test them out here and then make sure that everything's good. Okay, so when should you do this? So I guess you should probably at least be testing your backups once a quarter, just to make sure that you have at least one good solid backup, maybe even once a month if you're not managing a whole lot. But let me tell you when it's critical to test your backup. Okay, so if you're about to go, and I'm sure there's some other, and you guys can put into chat when you think it's really critical to test your backups. But when I'm going to optimize all the images on a site, let me tell you, if you do not test your backup, this could be a game ender right here. Because if you've gone to optimize all the images on the site, and there's like lots and lots of images, and you over optimize those images, and now all the images look like crap on the entire website, and you go back to bring that back, and you can't restore that site, you've just ruined your website, or given yourself 3 weeks worth of full-time work, if it's a big site, of replacing all of those images one by one, right? So for me, and I'm saying that because that has happened to me before. I used an image optimization service, and in some way it actually corrupted. It went and optimized all the images on the entire server, and I'm not quite sure how that happened. But so even my backups on the server were corrupted, right? So if I had not had a backup and another backup, I'd have been messed up. So I think it's really critical to install, like for me, for instance, and I just did this twice this last week, is I would export through all-in-one migration. Then I would go over to my Linode, to my Server Avatar account, log in, create a WordPress install, upload the all-in-one migration file, test it out, make sure it looks good, check my key pages, flip through there, make sure the images look good. And then I would go and start optimizing the website, right? And so you might even want to test, like in this case, you want to test your backup before you make any changes. So and you might think, well, that's a level of crazy, but you know what? This is what my client is paying for, is to be extremely vigilant on their behalf. Okay. Now, how do you guys test your backups? Anybody test their backups? Come on. Nobody's testing their backups? Oh, see, well, we're going to learn something today. We got a couple here. Nope. Yeah, locally with desktop server. Oh, that's a great idea, Melanie. Tom, no. Okay, so here's another way that you can test your backup. So, those little hosting packages that are like $4, $3, maybe they're fantastic, but maybe the speed isn't amazing. Maybe the security isn't amazing. Get one of those, maybe it's the $6 a month is too much. Get one of the cheaper ones and just install it, check your backups, then delete it, and then come back and you can do that again later. Let's see. Occasionally, depends on the client. Yep. So this is one of those things that it's pretty intense, right? So if you've got a brochure, most of my clients have brochure sites, right? So they're not changing, maybe twice a year they're changing stuff. So do I really need to test all the backups that I have for that? No, I just need to test one, make sure we have a good backup, and that's it, right? One thing you can also do is you can test your backups if you're using managed WP. You can test that with their clones. So you can create a fresh WordPress install somewhere, hook it up to managed WP, and clone. If you're paying for the backups, like I said, it's $2 a month. And then you just clone from one of your backups to the fresh install. Boom, you can test it right there, and that's it. That's probably the easiest way to do it. But since I already have this situation set up, that's what's easiest for me. And also, it's a really nice way to start really getting comfortable with VPS because there's no stakes, right? So if you create an install and you upload your backup and it doesn't work, it hasn't hurt you at all. It's not like you're launching websites. So if you've ever been interested in getting started, like I said, it's literally $6 a month for a small Linode box with backups, and you can get a free server avatar account. Okay. Backing up your workstation. Where are we? 1202. Okay, I'm doing all right. So this is what I do. So we talked about backing up your websites, but let's talk about the files on your computer, because I know if you're like me, you've got just a ton of stuff that you have downloaded. So what I use is a combination of Dropbox and Google Drive. So Dropbox, I have a personal account. It's got like a terabyte of space, and I just sync everything, and everything that I download on my computer, I try to put in my Dropbox folder. That way, if anything happens, I just re-download my Dropbox folder. And I've got my desktop, I have my Chromebook, I have a gaming computer, I have, a couple of other devices. And so I can hop around on my devices, and I can always access those files. Now, my Chromebook, I can't download Dropbox folder because I don't have that much space in it, but I can log into Dropbox. And my Chromebook automatically syncs with Google Drive. And so I'm able to just kind of jump back and forth there. I think it was Jocelyn said that she uses Carbonite to back up her entire machine, and which is really great. If you've got a lot of programs, if your kid's running Minecraft, if you really want to back up your whole PC, I've heard that this is a great option. Me, I don't, we don't really have that much going on. I think I have like one program that actually runs on my machine and not in the cloud. So that's what works for me. All right, let's see what other people are saying. Anybody using OneDrive? Okay. So I don't use OneDrive, but I think it works just like, the sync on it works just like Google Drive and Dropbox. So you can, when you save things, you can save it to your OneDrive folder and have subfolders in there, and it just syncs. And, so if you need to restore it, you can. Talking about the difference between just backing up computer files and creating a backup you can easily restore from Mac and PC. So that's a good point, Tom. And this is where I'm not super techie in this area, but I would say that if you need to restore all your like the installation files, right? So when you when you get a new computer, usually you're allowed to make backup disks, so that if anything happens, your whole OS crashes, that you can restore them, right? And I don't know if Carbonite will take the whole thing, and you can I don't know how that works, but I do think that, and that's something for me because I've got a computer that I haven't done that burn on. So this is a good reminder that if you have not done your major restore disk for your Mac or PC, now would be the time to do that. So that's going on my to-do list. Okay, and then I remember Backblaze will send you a drive of your backup as an option. Oh, that's really interesting. Okay, that's really good. What else? Somebody was asking me the difference between incremental backups, and we're going back to websites. I just remembered that this was a question. Incremental backups versus full backups. Okay, so incremental backups, and this is the kind of backups that managed WP does. So they do where basically they're taking your website and then they're only changing for the backup the things that have changed, right? So if I have edited some of the content, they don't take and today they don't, they don't take a new backup, full backup of the entire site. They're just taking the backup that we already have and changing the new stuff, right? And so what that does is that allows them to give us as many backups as we need without taking, a huge amount of space. Now, this is another reason to have multiple levels of backups, because a lot of hosting companies also do incremental backups. Okay. Well, what happens if if the backup that they're editing is corrupted in some way? Then all your backups are corrupted, right? So this is a good reason to export your entire site, at least, I would say, at least once a month. And you can do that through, I think, all-in-one migration. You can also go into your hosting company, take a copy of all the files and export your database, right? So that's the one that's going to be the most secure. If you just copy all the files and export your database, you have everything. Worst case scenario, then you have to go back in through FTP and PHP and add those back. But you should have a full backup at least periodically. Okay. Let's see. Okay. Q&A time. Let's go in here. You guys have any questions? I know I went through that. I'm a little amped up today, so I went through that pretty fast. Okay, so everybody's got hosting backups, right? And you have checked that they're all turned on. Has everybody done that? We're not assuming that our host has them on. We've double checked it. Okay, cool. Who is going to be adding backups? A level of backups, right? So I'm going to tell you what I have. I have hosting backups everywhere. It went to the site. Oh, yeah, backups not turned on. Definitely adding backups. So this is what I do. I have backups turned on at all my hosts. I have managed WP. Yep, 30 days. Backup Buddy twice weekly. I have managed WP on all the sites. And I have either Updraft or all-in-one migration where I can manually export those. Yeah, I love WP Engine too. And I'll tell you, here's my horror story for backups. So many years ago, I was the webmaster for a large library system. And my job was to take them off of their old site, put it in WordPress. It was like an old HTML site. I rebuilt it in WordPress. It was really great. It was a big step forward for them. And we launched on a Sunday night. And of course, Sunday, I did just a ton of work, like 3 hours of just last minute tweaking, going through, grooming the site. Sunday night, I launched the site. Okay. Everything looks great. Monday morning, I realized that I had been looking at a cached version and the site was not right. And so I had to push it back. I had to restore it to a previous version. But what happened was the backup that I had taken after I got everything the way I wanted it had failed. And so it put me back to the backup from before I made those 3 hours of edits. Okay. So I was like, oh, well, that's not going to work. So I went to my backup buddy backup, and my backup buddy was corrupted. And so that didn't work. And so I had to go to my third level, which at the time was CodeGuard, which that's a great service too, if you guys have never tried that. So CodeGuard was on, and I was able to restore it back. So this whole thing, I found it failed really quickly. So within 15 minutes, I was able to have the site completely restored, but I probably would have lost my job if I had not had backups to 3 levels, right? So, yeah. Backup hourly on Dev, yes. And so that's one of the things that I do is before updates, during updates, after updates. It's just so incredibly important. There's nothing more demoralizing than having figured out some complicated thing that was wrong on your site and you fix it and you're celebrating and then something happens and you have to go do it all over again. That's often. Why do backups get corrupted? Well, sometimes it's just, the process of taking the backup, it just didn't work completely, right? Or you took a backup and there was malware on the site and now there's malware in your backup, right? Or it timed out, like it was sending the backup somewhere and it just timed out, so only some of the files got over there. You've been having problems with CodeGuard using FTP. It wants you to use FTP, but you're struggling doing that. Are you struggling doing that, Bianca, because you're not used to using it on FileZilla, or what's the issue you're having there? Why don't you can unmute yourself if you want.
Thank you so much. Okay, so I actually, it's a Girls Inc. website that I've been helping to maintain, and it was set up fine actually, but then the client did not renew it. So all the backups we had previously got erased, and so I've been trying to reset it, and the database links up fine using FTP. No, not FTP, but the database is backing up fine. It's just with the website, when I try to use FTP, like you were mentioning, it times out. It doesn't finish, and it never finishes. So when I try to, and it suggested as FTP, but I think their site is not configured for FTP, and I'm still a newbie when it comes to SFTP setup.
So not all hosting companies offer SFTP.
Hmm.
So probably the issue is now that you probably need to do some manual backups just to have them, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then maybe switch services, or they've renewed their CodeGuard service, right?
They did, and so I've been using Updraft, and so Updraft is updating it weekly, but I see it on the dashboard in my WP dashboard, but I'm still trying to figure out, okay, if shit hits the fan and the site crashes in File Manager, where are those files located? You know what I mean?
Yep. So if CodeGuard's requiring SFTP, I would just move to a different service. I would move to manage WP,
Okay.
and then do something like Updraft where you can manually export it. And we haven't talked about, offsite backups, but Dropbox, AWS, Google Drive, these are all perfectly appropriate places to store your backups.
Okay. Yeah, I'll definitely look into manage WP because it's been suggested to me before, but this this is definitely a reconfirmation that I need to get it together and do it.
It's so easy to set up too, honestly. So you just go in, you install the plugin from the repository, and then you take the connection key, and inside your managed WP dashboard, there's just like a plus sign. So you go through there, click a few buttons, enter your connection key. It will sync it up. Then you have to add backups. Like I said, it's $2 or less per site per month, and then it'll immediately start taking a backup. I would run that 3 times. So when you start doing a backup, you want to at least have 3 backups. So I just take one, I take another one, then I take another one. And I set mine up for daily backups. I think you can do it for free for monthly backups if you're really, struggling. But, and, no shame in that. You've been there. But it's really, like I said, it's pretty affordable for daily backups.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. You can turn on versioning, which is a backup of your backup. I might have to ask you to talk to us about this, Melanie. Can you address this, because I'm not quite sure. I've never done that. So can you tell us what you mean by that?
When you set up a bucket, now if you've never done AWS, you actually, this is AWS S3. It's the super simple storage. It's like stupid cheap. You don't even get charged until you get 2 gigs. And but one of the things you can do when you set up the bucket is it actually asks you if you want to turn on versioning. Now, of course, it's AWS, so it doesn't actually explain what that is. But what versioning is basically a backup. So it does what's a snapshot every time you make a change. So what it is a backup. So you can always go back. And a good example is I had a church. I set up their AWS. I turned on versioning for their sermon folder. I had somebody actually delete 10 years of sermons.
Oh,
Which I just went back in versioning and restored it with one click.
wow.
So that's what scares me about Dropbox and Google Drive is they don't, I mean, if you shared that with somebody and somebody, does a uh-oh moment, and you're screwed. So, because there's not a backup of a backup. So if you're using Dropbox and Google Drive for backups, make sure you have there are services that connect to them and back them up. So I like AWS because I think you can only turn it on when you set up the bucket. They may have changed that, but it's just something I automatically do whenever I create a bucket is to turn on versioning. But yeah, they don't explain it well. So, but it's far cheaper than Google Drive. But now again, there's things about it that make it a little bit more difficult, like automation and stuff like that. With Zapier, you have to write bucket policies and things like that. But there's lots of resources out there. But it's a lot cheaper than Google Drive, because as you said, those backups mount fast. And I have 85 sites that I manage. They all back up to, I have 30 days of backups to AWS. And I just got my bill today, and it's $51.
Oh, wow.
A month. So that is a lot cheaper. I mean, if you're just starting out and you want something easy, use Google Drive or Dropbox. But when you start getting a lot, you might want to think about something there's a lot of great bulk services out there, and some that are even cheaper than AWS.
I think I have a terabyte in my Dropbox,
Mm-hmm.
And I think I pay like $16 a month for it.
Yeah, see, I'm way beyond the single terabyte at this point. So, it's like 5 cents a gig.
Oh, that's not bad.
On AWS, it may even be cheaper, maybe only 2 cents a gig, but and I'm at $51, so that should tell you how much data.
And you know what I like to do too is I like to keep more than 3 months. I like to have like what it was a year ago, what it is today,
And that is very important. I'm glad you brought that up, because I actually started doing a quarterly just snapshot and save off, because I actually had somebody ask me a couple weeks ago, I need to see what the site looked like in December 2019.
Yeah. And I don't do this for all of them.
They wanted to know what one page looked like, and I actually had that.
Yeah. I have a lot of backups, at least going back 3 months. But I recently, had somebody say, there was this thing that we used to have on the website 2 years ago. And exactly. I happened to have that backup, which was amazing that I had archived that. And I was like,
the only reason I had it is because I had actually created a backup system folder on my AWS and had moved people's backups to everybody being in a master folder or a master bucket for versioning. But I had not deleted the individual website backup. So I actually had that, but that made me think, I need to do that and make that a quarterly task for my VA.
Yeah, that's a really good idea.
Mm-hmm.
And to standardize this, because sometimes it's like I will take and archive a backup when I think of it, But, and I'm not saying like I do daily backups and monthly backups and archives and stuff like that on a regular basis. But I'm talking about like making sure that you've got one specific version put away somewhere.
Mhm.
I need to have that more on a routine for sure.
Yeah, I'm just going to figure out how to do it with Zapier.
Yeah.
And automate it.
Someone was saying versioning. David was saying versioning on S3 should not be used for backups. Can you explain what you're saying, what you mean there, David?
Yeah, most definitely. Hi, hello from Portland, Oregon, by the way. Thanks for doing this. I was going to suggest also you might want to have a discussion about retention policies on AWS, because it can actually take things from S3 and put it into Glacier or Deep Glacier.
Mm-hmm.
And you may want to touch on that. So you're best off using either differential or incremental backups and relying on those small snippets to increase over time. Versioning does not work with incrementals the way that most people think that it works. And what you don't want is you don't want a version of your core initial backup and then have an incremental that was not put into a versioning at that time. You can dig yourself out of it, but it's nightmarish.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you recommend?
Well, if you're using S3, which I don't generally recommend, because locking it down security-wise, is, you probably know, is really tough. But I do have backups to Backblaze as well as S3, and in both cases, I don't use versioning, but I use that retention policy. That's where over time it moves to a cheaper storage. So that's because Amazon has something called Glacier, and they have something called Deep Glacier. So personally, I have two clients that have the most complicated that you could ever imagine backup and disaster recovery policies that they have to adhere to. Plus, one of them is HIPAA compliant. So, I mean, a level of sophistication. And in those cases, they do put things into Deep Glacier at one point.
So in the situation what Melanie was talking about, somebody wanted a page that was on the website from a year ago. Right?
Yeah, so if it's on regular S3 and you're using a good backup plugin, it's actually really easy to restore that with most of the backup software. If you end up having data that goes into Glacier or Deep Glacier, you do have to wait for a period of time before it's actually available to you.
Yeah.
So Glacier takes things off of the internet and they put it onto tape. So they have these automated systems that when you say I want to restore, literally it has to go find it in their data centers and then it makes it available to you. 6 hours in some cases. Deep Glacier is 48 hours before you can even touch that data.
Wow.
But you're talking, I mean, to give you an idea, it's, as you probably know, it's ridiculously inexpensive to begin with. 3 cents gigabytes. When you get into Deep Glacier, you're talking about 0.0. It's what they call the 96th percentile, 0.0001 per gigabyte.
That would be something that, now that you're explaining that would be something to, like, you could back up your entire business, like all of your clients, and just put them all on tape, just in case, that there was like some catastrophic failure at multiple points, like, Google died and, Cloudflare is down for a week.
Or even video backups, those video files get extraordinarily large. And sometimes you have people that upload files without consideration, 5,000 by 3,000. And if you use a compression, software like a Short Pixel, for example, it retains the original in addition to its compressed version. And those things grow fairly large.
Right.
Does that make sense? I don't know if that, yeah.
I think so. Thank you.
That was a long answer for a simple question. Sorry.
Well, that's a little bit more complicated than I understand, but The reason that I didn't really do a tutorial is because I don't use AWS. I mean, I use AWS a tiny little bit, but I'm not very confident in it. But I did in the Linkity, in the backups.linkity.me, I have a link to a tutorial for backing up to AWS, and I have a tutorial for backing up to Dropbox. Do you know of a good resource to explain the type of stuff that you're talking about, David? We could add that also to the page later.
As in, like, resources to tell you how to back up?
Yes, because that's what we're trying to do. We're just trying to teach people how to do this kind of stuff for themselves. So
yeah,
if
WP Beginner, if you're novice or beginner at WordPress, I would say if you're intermediate level, or even into the advanced, if you use Updraft Plus, for example, their documentation is pretty spot on. It's a little techy though.
Yeah.
Right. So you have to be at those. You have to be willing to trudge through it sometimes. But WP Beginner actually has fairly good introductions to this.
Well, I think we've got the introductory levels covered. I was more talking about like doing what you were talking about with Glacier and Deep Glacier. Is that something you just figured out on your own, or is there a good resource that you could share with us?
So there is a piece of software called Prowler, Prowler, that explains how you go about locking down AWS and the S3, and that is actually just super important. I mean, if you think about it, most of these backup software, like Updraft Plus, or even all-in-one migration, they have these features where they just do it. They just back up to S3. The question is your S3 bucket leaking to the world? I mean, we're not Rite Aid. We're not, these big companies for the most part. I do audits I'm a security professional. I do audits, and man, the leakage is incredible. If you don't know how to back up, by the way, here's a recommendation. If you're doing S3, create a new user for each individual backup. It's called IAM. Create one for each backup.
Yeah, I do that. I actually create a new user, so they're all, and every bucket is only, I create a bucket policy as well. So that you can get in the weeds really fast with AWS, but I was in IT, so I'm a security freak. So yeah, I go through the trouble and I documented it. The backup software like Backup Buddy, Updraft, and all, they'll walk you through basically getting AWS connected, but they don't talk anything about like bucket policies and things like that. But the nice thing is once you've written one, you can use that as a template for all the other ones.
Oh, spot on, yes. And
Yeah.
that Prowler has links to how to protect your S3.
That's
Yeah, see,
really
I looked for software. I know there used to be one, I can't remember the name of it, but I'm gonna look at that Prowler software if ever making it anything that's gonna be easier than writing a bucket box.
I would not run the Prowler software necessarily, but I would look at their documentation.
Yeah.
And they reference a PDF that's exceptional.
Yeah. Oh, great. That's great to know.
Oh, wonderful. And we'll try to find that PDF and post it in the Facebook group as well. And maybe y'all let me know in the Facebook group if you're interested in doing a backups mastermind, because it might be good for us to do like maybe a 3 weeks. We'll meet once a week just to get our backups up and running. If we don't have them, to get to 3 levels, if we're not at 3 levels, and to maybe even do some of these advanced things like Melanie and David are talking about. So y'all let me know about that over the next week. Good, better, best. All right.
Oh, can I throw out 2 other things?
Sure.
For computer backups, there is also the concept of imaging, which is related to backups. The idea that you can just take your hard drive, your local hard drive, and be able, in a moment's notice, to be able to walk over to a different computer and restore it so it boots immediately. They call that imaging. And on the Macintosh, there's something called Carbon Copy Cloner, which is exceptional and relied upon. And on the Windows side, there's something called Macrium, Macrium. And those are, does that make sense?
I do.
I just did it for my wife recently, where her laptop died, and we were able to actually literally walk into a store at Costco, and we restored the backup within a matter of hours. And it booted, right? The machine was like fully boot. It's not a file backup, it's an image of the hard drive. So
Those images.
image backups is what they're referred to as
Yeah,
opposed
so
to,
how often are you taking an image of your machine so that you have the most recent one?
personally,
Mm-hmm.
I will have an external hard drive that is plugged in that will do it once a day.
Okay.
And it does incremental image backups.
Okay.
But yeah, but I'm a geek, as some of you here know.
Same here.
Nice. Well, we all need people who are geekier in areas that we're not, right? So I'm super geeky in some areas, but honestly, backups, I feel like I'm really careful to have enough backups, but I'm not, I don't go as deep as I could. And so this is also like, I'm talking to myself, I'm preaching to the choir here today that, even those of us who, are really good at making sure we have enough backups, maybe we need better or different ones as well. So.
And can you mention the 3-2-1 backup idea? I mean, that's an old school idea you probably ran into.
I'm not sure. Can you explain?
If you Google it, you'll see it. It's it's called 3-2-1. Always keep 3 backups, 2 different forms of media, and one of them off-site.
We covered that. We just didn't call it that. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So you want 3 different forms of backups. One, and Melanie would say she keeps hers in 3 different places. So I think I'm more like, well, I don't know, on the server, managed WP, and I put a manual one in Google Drive or Dropbox. I think that's what I do. But yeah, I think that's a great policy, and I think that makes it easier to understand. 3-2-1. Thank you for that. Okay, let's see. Did everybody get a copy of the landing page where we can go and you can access all these links? I hope so. And I think that's it, folks. Wait, do I have anything else? Nope, we're all done. All right, so I'm going to, it'll probably be several days, and I will have this video with transcripts up on our YouTube channel for Remote Control Living. I'll have it in the Facebook group as well. I have a Patreon where I put all the videos as soon as we're done. So like there's no editing or transcripts or anything, but that goes up there. And these are the WordPress ones do not go behind the paywall. So they'll be up there immediately as soon as I get to. And that link is also on the page. Prowler had a link to a helpful PT Prowler. Okay, cool, Prowler. Okay, so I will try to edit the Linkity page with Prowler and a few other things, I think, if I can remember what they are. But other than that, I think we're done, and I will see you. Let's continue the conversation in the Facebook group, and I will have the video for this up on Patreon pretty soon, free to everyone, and then up on YouTube in a few days. All right. Thank you so much for coming out. Talk to you later.